Our next session is James Varland and Michael Klobnack from the Second Judicial District DOC, and they are going to speak about wellness and corrections. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the session. Thank you.
And also feel free to speak out too. We're more than welcome. We're going to have some conversation. Hopefully, this can be something that we can all engage in. So if you want to turn your cameras on, speak up at any time, we're totally fine with that because this is our first attempt at this particular session itself. So ready to rock and roll, Jim?
I am. So yeah, as Michael said, we're pretty laid back and informal. So if you have anything to add, you can either put it in the chat or just jump in, whatever. So my name is Jim Varland. I work for the Second District. And Michael and I are coworkers. So Jennifer had asked me a while ago to speak on corrections fatigue because I had done that training about 10 years ago with a different agency. And I decided I wanted to make it about a little bit about corrections fatigue and a lot about wellness because the previous curriculum really focused on the effects of our job rather than some of the solutions. So I'm just kind of flip-flopping it a little bit. So we work, all of us here, and I know all of us here don't work for corrections, but all of us here work with the most traumatized population in our society. And so that really wears on us and can take a toll. So before I wanted to begin, I just wanted to start with some humor because when you do this work, you develop kind of a weird sense of humor. So I saw this meme the other day and I thought it was kind of funny. So if the show Cops has taught me anything, it's to stay away from people with blurry faces. They're nothing but trouble. So they don't serve as protective factors. I just thought that was funny. So anyway, so I wanted to start with a quick discussion about corrections fatigue. And again, it's you don't have to work in corrections to experience this, but it's our clientele because our clientele studies show they have higher ACE scores than the general population. They've been through tons of trauma, usually childhood trauma, tons of trauma just from living with addictions or whatever. And so when you're a helper, that really wears on you. And it can really eat at you if you don't take care of yourself. So before we start talking about self-care, I just want to go through, do a quick presentation on how this job can really affect us. So in regards to corrections nationwide, I didn't realize that there are 650,000 people that work in jails and prisons and 90,000 that work in probation parole nationwide. And a lot of the research I'm going to present to you, there's a ton of it that's being done on correctional workers, not a lot on probation parole. So if any of you are working on a PhD and need some dissertation ideas, that is something that hasn't been studied yet, but just the effects of compassion fatigue or corrections fatigue on that 90,000 that work in probation parole nationwide. The average lifespan, I learned this from the previous curriculum that I presented on, is just 59 years old statewide or nationwide. And this compares to 79 years, the national average. The average length of retirement for a correctional officer is just 4 years. People that work in corrections have higher rates of depression, PTSD, and suicide than the average population. And correctional officers have a higher suicide rate than military veterans and police officers. Mary Roach is the head of our statewide, all the SST teams, and she said this in the SST training, and I knew it was high, and I didn't believe it. And as my color is green, I love facts and data and stuff, so I jumped in, I did the research, and Mary's right. I had a really hard time wrapping my head around that, but that is very true. Some of the things that leads to this, just for the impact on the corrections population, is overpopulation of prison. The United States has the highest prison population worldwide. I think Russia is a distant second. A lot of the, whenever you have high prison populations, people in the community also have high caseloads. And so it's just the stress of having overcrowding, high caseloads. It's difficult for people to manage. And a lot of staff, I learned this in EMDR training, but there's what's called big T and little T um, traumas. Um, some of the big T traumas are things that we come across. Maybe it's in institutions like uh, it could be suicides or fights or assaults or things like that. In the field, we do a lot of home visits, and so we see some things that can be very traumatic for us and can traumatize us. The little T traumas, on the other end, is when you work with our clientele, they've been through a lot of trauma, and we're coming alongside them to help them. And so just their stories of trauma can also impact us and our mental health and our own well-being. Um, we also have conflicts with clients, with courts, with families, attorneys. It's for the probation parole officers, it's really hard because you want to support the client and you want to treat them, but you also have to protect the community. And so sometimes there's this role conflict that we have where, if you have to revoke somebody or hold them accountable, sometimes it's really hard on the PO. And dealing with courts and families, attorneys, very stressful job. The public perception, sometimes with corrections, isn't always the best. And so sometimes when you're overworked and traumatized yourself, when you're unwell, stay away from the public comments on KCCI and WHO and things like that. Sometimes the public perception isn't the best. In my career, I've been through 2 really nasty budget cuts. And so, we've seen layoffs and closures and things like that. So that's also very stressful when you work in corrections or nonprofits and things like that. I know nonprofits have they've been through probably more budget cuts than we have. So anyway, what I wanted to focus on from here on out is wellness, because all this is true. And this is a tough job, but if we don't take care of ourselves, it really makes us ineffective.
Right.
And so self-care and having a good mindset helps us live longer. It helps us be healthier, and it really helps us to be more effective with our clients as well.
Right. Very good. And thanks for mentioning the nonprofits, Jim, because Amanda made a comment about that this fatigue also affects those who work in the nonprofit organizations with justice impacted individuals.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely true. And keep up the comments as we go, because these are important factors. And when, like Jim was saying, when we were looking at formulating this for today, we really wanted the focus to be on wellness. So the first question that comes up here, I want to ponder it for a minute before we get to another meme, is where should our focus be? Okay, because all this information is going to be applicable to whatever you do. This is a lifelong thing for all of us. And I like to say, especially if you're a leader, an organization tends to take the direction of the leadership. If I'm a leader and I'm unhealthy, there's a good chance that the people that are with me are going to end up being unhealthy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So leaderships have this added burden on their back of being well. So we're going to focus on that as we go forward. But where should our focus be? All right. So never wish them pain. If we talk about the stuff that we deal with, the big T, little t, never wish them pain. That's not who you are. If they cause you pain, they must have pain inside. Wish them healing. That's what they need. And I think that's what a lot of us need in general. It's this idea of healing inside. So again, our focus today is wellness. As Jim said before, most of the presentations that I've been to tend to focus on the doom and gloom of the career choices that we make. Yeah, now that we've discussed those aspects, let's spend the rest of the time that we have discussing and focusing on something else, which is wellness. Okay. So I like to give this visual example for those of you that are here. I want you to think about how you're designed as a human being. Your eyes are at the top of your head, pointed forward for a reason. I've used this example throughout all the treatment groups I've done for probably a couple decades now, because I think it's pretty far. Our eyes are focused forward. They're not at our feet. They don't point backwards. Okay. So we are designed to look forward into the future as human beings, all of us. are designed that way. We're designed to pursue reward. It really is the reason we get out of bed. There's a reason that I got up today. It's because I got to come here and speak with you folks about something that I'm passionate about wellness. We get to look forward to the future towards our values, the things that we care about, the things that matter to us. And those values serve as our lighthouses or our guideposts. If any of you have done work with active achieving change through values-based decision making, you realize that values are something we can move towards. They're things that we strive to move toward as human beings. They are our guideposts. And as we move towards those goals, we pursue, as we move towards our values, we pursue our goals, those rewards, if you will. So if we value wellness, and this is a question for all of you, so please throw something in the chat or speak up. If we value wellness, what types of goals might we set? If you want to get well, what might be something you need to consider or you have considered in the past? Okay, comes the chat. Balance and boundaries. Okay. Seeing a therapist. Okay. Very good. Making sure that I'm taking breaks at work and lunch. All right. Stress management. Sleep, good hydration, work-life balance, different career, work-life balance, very different career. Gotcha. And Sarah does not mean a different career in corrections. She means moving on to a different position in corrections. I'm going to clarify that. Seeing a lot of balance here. Oh, this is great. This is right along the lines of what we're going to get into. I love it. Okay. Yep. Healthy hobby. Very good. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. Vacation. Excellent. I love it. I love it. Okay. So I'm going to take you on a little, and keep them coming in the chat. I'll pick up here where we left off in a second. But I want to talk a little bit about what we call avoidance and approach goals. Okay, now this is something that we go through in sex offender treatment. This is a typical part of the curriculum. We have different ways that we can approach, or different ways we can work towards or away from wellness. We can have a goal that is an avoidance goal, like quitting smoking. Maybe it's eating less, losing weight, or we can have getting healthy as our approach goal. Remember, we talked about how our eyes are pointed forward. They're designed to move us forward towards the things we value. If my goal is to quit smoking, which I will claim I'm a former smoker, it was all about how am I going to quit? How am I going to get away from this? And so I spent a lot of my time kind of avoiding and looking all around the places that I'm trying to avoid. That's a lot of energy wasted, quite frankly. But if I switch it and say, I'm going to get healthy, that viewpoint is different. It's very different. Because what we choose to focus on will ultimately be the result. When our mindset changes, our health goes with it. Okay. See some more chat stuff here. Work-life balance. Okay. Healthy hobby, life and work. Very good. And we're going to get into that. Okay. Share your struggles and seek for the help needed. This is good. Yes, Amanda, this is why I love the Good Lives model for SOTP. Absolutely. Because this is how we're designed, right? Okay. Excellent. So wellness, if we were to define it, this is from SAMHSA. We do have it in the references, or just a couple references for you today, not much. It says, we find ourselves at the center of the 8 dimensions of wellness. It's been described as a balance or a harmony. Now, I'd always heard this work-life balance part, but I saw this from, I think it was the University of Maryland, took a quote from it. It says, while all dimensions of wellness need our attention for us to truly flourish, there doesn't have to be a balance among all the dimensions. Instead, the goal is to find a personal harmony with the dimensions that are most authentic for you. You can't get there passively. It requires active awareness, acceptance, and commitment through choices you make every day, no matter how small. And I'll have a challenge for you at the end of this today. The bottom line is, as Jim alluded to earlier, wellness is a mindset, and it starts with understanding me. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So from Soulology, it says, we are not here long enough to be living unhappy. How true is that? Okay, time for a group discussion. Feel free to speak up or write in the chat, whichever you prefer. What personal choices might cause disharmony or an imbalance for you? Let's start there. What personal choices cause disharmony or an imbalance for you? If you know yourself, what can cause that? McDonald's.
McDonald's. That's awesome.
Katrina, thank you so much for your honesty. Share your story, Jim.
Katrina, I had, is it Nathan? I can never say his last name, Bergazzi or whatever. He's that comedian that's really clean. Said he sees people, when he's tried to get well, he said, I see people like doing triathlons or running marathons. And he said, if I could just get myself to quit stopping at McDonald's at 10 o'clock at night, that'd be great. That's what I'm shooting for. So anyway, that was funny.
I love that. Amanda says focusing too much on one thing. Okay. Yep. That goes to one of those, our scope is too small, right? Not focusing on enough. Bringing work home with me. Yeah, gee, I've never done that.
Sleep is a big one. They say we need 8 hours. I'm trying to get well right now, and so I'm practicing wellness. And the trainer I work with holds me accountable to 8 hours, and I don't get 8. I get about 7. So
yes, and I can point to research on that about the importance of. There are people that actually focus their day and time around sleep. That's something I absolutely need to do, but I still got 2 kids, unfortunately, one of which threw up multiple times last night. So, yes, exactly, Chelsea. When my kids don't sleep at night, that's what happened to me. Lynette, not treating people with the kindness I want to be treated with. Very good. I like that. And I always like to share too, we have the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But I always like to take that one step further, which is to treat people how they need to be treated. Really that's kind of the key to it, right? Allowing someone to overstep boundaries. Oh yeah, very good. Personally have to know what's being unwell looks like for me so I can adjust efforts to be better. Thank you, Blake. We're going to get into that in a moment. Prioritizing work over myself or my family, stressing over the things I cannot change, saying yes too much. Boy, this is all very personal for me. Cooking an unhealthy meal because it's convenient. Luke, pursuing a master's degree while working full-time and being a dad and husband. Dude, I get it. I just did that a few years ago. That's something. Putting too much on my plate, overextending myself. Yep, very good. True health boundaries. As a leader, we often take our work home and we never shut down. This is where we need to interject spiritual guidance. I like that, Patrick. Taking care of everyone around me, but not myself. Thank you. These are great ideas. Sugar is a massive destroyer and increases stress in the brain, emotions, dehydration. Really important to try and limit sugar. Taking on others' problems and personalizing it. Can anybody else raise their hand and say I've done every one of these things before? Because I know I can. And that's why, look how quickly we can throw out all these things that cause that disharmony or that imbalance in our lives. Because I think most of us have probably done one or many of these things, or in my case, probably all of them. Okay, so this is great. Thank you so much for that. So the question for you then is, where do you personally start if you desire to find a personal harmony or balance? Now, I know that there was a lot of comments already made to that effect, but if there's, what has been like the number one thing for you? If you think about where do you personally start, if you desire to find a personal harmony or balance, where do you start? And feel free to repeat if you need to. I share my goal with my loved ones. Very good, Katrina. So, and you can feel free to speak up on that, but I want to talk about that briefly because this is important.
I want to mention what Patrick said, taking on others' problems and personalizing it.
Yes.
I know I've been guilty of that when I'm not well, because wellness isn't something that it's not like crossing the finish line at a marathon. It's about something that you have to fight every day. It's nothing that you accomplish. You try to stay on the good side of wellness when you're in this job. And so I just know when I'm unwell, you personalize it when a client struggles or fails or whatever, and you can't do that because it's about them, you know.
Very good. Katrina, you mentioned letting other people know. I like to tell people that as we grow internally, we do it best in the context of community. And we're going to get into that in a minute as well. But we do not live life in a bubble. We are not alone in all this. The things that we experience, whether we're in corrections or outside of corrections, whether in the business world, it doesn't matter. We all have stressors that cause strain. We have things we all deal with. Look at this. And it's always best to have support. So looking at life goals, turn off the phone. I like that.
Sherry said outside, enjoy nature. That's me too. I think that's what our body's like, is fresh air, sunshine, and movement. So I like that.
We never get enough sunshine. That's why our vitamin D, which by the way is my understanding is a hormone. That's why it's always bad, or it's not as high as it needs to be. Take a minute to myself, breathe. Husband, okay. Yep. Focus on values. Thank you, Zach. Put your goals in writing and find someone to check in and they'll hold you accountable to be here. Miss Lynette, keep it coming. I love it. Spending time with those that make me laugh. That's one thing I will say about Jim is he has, we were kind of barbing each other a little bit before we even started. I won't share what I said to him, but it was, but we just kind of poke fun at each other to, to loosen things up a little bit. Find things to find peace. Okay. Very good. All right. Excellent. So the question becomes, where do we start? Now, Jim and I talked about, we're going to talk about the EQI briefly and then also wrap. Jim's going to share that because he is one of the experts in it. The question always becomes, where do I start? Well, you've all kind of mentioned it starts with me. And really, when it comes down to it too, there really is no perfect answer for all people because we are all individual people with individual desires, beliefs, thoughts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in our department, we've been utilizing the EQI 2.0. It's something that we're doing with staff right now. I'm a coach for it, as is Jim. A couple of people on the call are actually in the process of going to EQI. I've done it myself, still in the process of making changes. But it is a proven assessment tool that can allow for each one of us to learn and develop personal and professional skill sets that will contribute to personal growth and well-being. And that's the key. It's the well-being part. So for those of you who may not be familiar, emotional intelligence is a set of emotional and social skills, and I'll explain that more in a minute, that influence the way we perceive and express ourselves, the way we develop or maintain relationships, the way we cope with challenges, and use emotional information in an effective, meaningful way. And while we know that IQ and personality usually remain pretty stable throughout our life, this emotional intelligence can be learned and modified through practice. Now, I heard somebody say once that that our IQ will never get higher than what it is, but that EQ can be utilized to help us gain our full potential of who we are as people. So the more we understand ourselves better.
I was pretty depressed when I found out that my IQ will never get any better. So I do accept that.
Acceptance is the first step, Jim. Okay. So the way I like to describe this to people that aren't familiar with it, and especially when I'm doing counseling sessions with folks to help them understand how we work, I brought it up earlier. We are human beings. We don't live in a bubble, and we have interactions with people around us on a daily basis. And sometimes we don't realize, I think as was stated earlier, how the way that we respond, the way that we act, our emotion, our status, all the stuff that we're dealing with can affect those around us and the mood in the room. And Jim, who was my coach at the time, pointed out a great number of things that, quite frankly, I was oblivious of. And he did it the way that I needed to hear it. He approached me the way that I needed to be approached. And I think it's helped. Now, I always revert back to old habits from time to time. We all do. But the key here is to understand that when we talk about emotional intelligence, if we're starting with me, it's me understanding myself, my responses, my emotions, and then learning to navigate those things well, to respond wisely to me. to understand how I'm going to be in this situation. Now, I knew that coming in today, I was going to be nervous to speak with what are 89 people here, 88 other individuals. Hey, that's stressful. I've never done this before. I mean, I've done speaking arrangements for 2 decades, but it's different when it's new crowd of faces you've never met. It's different. It just is. And so my stress I could feel building. And I know that I have a tendency to struggle with that on my way to work. So I put on a little bit of music and then I turned it off and I prayed a little bit and I did what I needed to do to provide self-care to keep myself calmed down. And even then, was I still nervous when I started? Absolutely. But do I feel nervous now? No, because I know that when I get into this, I feel pretty good. Okay. So I have an understanding of me and I know that I need to respond wisely. The other part to this, though, is that there's others in this world. And how well do I recognize the way that they're responding at this moment to me or outside stimuli? Do I understand how they might be responding to the stressful situation they're in? Somebody that has a high level of emotional intelligence, I would argue, can read the room very well, can say, this is what somebody's struggling with. And then not only that, but then navigate that relationship well. So there's really 4 parts to it, if you think about it. But it all starts with me.
Can I throw something in, Michael?
Absolutely.
When I started my own EQI coaching with Joel McAnulty years ago, he asked me something that was pretty profound to me that really helped my mindset. And that is, how do people experience Jim? And it was such a simple question. I asked a lot of my staff that. I went home. I had to ask my wife and kids that. Just how did they experience me? And I had to take that feedback. It was both good and bad. And one thing that we did as a leader is we did the 360 feedback. And at first, when I did that, I was really, really nervous about the feedback my staff were going to get because it was anonymous. But now, whenever I have my evaluation every year with Amanda, I look forward to that because I've learned to accept my faults. I've learned to be aware of my weaknesses and know what my gaps are and be comfortable hearing that feedback from my staff. And so I really try every year to close those gaps. And so the first thing I go to is that 360 feedback because I want to know if they've noticed what I've been working on. And something else I read during my own EQI journey, and I live by this quote, I have it in my office. It says, the amount of growth that a person is capable of is directly proportional to the amount of truth they can accept about themselves without running away. Mm-hmm. And that is so true. So when we start this work in that wellness, we have to accept a lot of truth about ourselves, both good and bad, because that's where accountability starts.
Right.
That's where growth starts. So
and that's a really good segue, Jim, because one of the things that Jim brought to my attention not too long ago that kind of rocked my world was he recognized, having worked with me and supervised me for a while, that competency is something that I value. It's something that's really important to me. And I share this with all the folks I'm working on the EQI with, is that he said, you really struggle with how people perceive you. You're worried that maybe you don't know enough. And so sometimes you speak a little too much. And he was right. He was absolutely right. It was kind of hard to hear, but he was right when he said that. He said, but people don't care what you know until they know that you care. It's about relationships first. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. Imagine how that applies to the people that you're working with for reentry. Let me just think about that for a minute. Are we just people that sit in an office and push the paper, or are we people that really try to truly connect? Now, I would gather that those of us who are here today really, really care. Probably very much so. We got a couple chat messages here. Amanda, you're asking if we can get a link to the EQI 2.0 assessment tool. Hang tight afterwards, and we can chit chat about the process we've gone through, and maybe we can connect you with somebody. But yeah, that's a good question. So we start with us. We start with understanding ourselves. Many of you are already, it sounds like, on that path. So let's keep moving forward, Jim.
All right. Another thing that the state has started to do, which I think is really good, we were trained in a Wellness Recovery Action Plan, or in other words, the acronym for that is WRAP. A lot of states have introduced WRAP into the prison systems and into the CVCs. WRAP is, what's the term I'm looking for? endorsed by SAMHSA, and SAMHSA is a government agency on substance abuse and mental health. It's very validated. The Pew Research Clearinghouse is where we get a lot of our correctional treatment programming. We look on there, they grade it. RAP is a 3.9 out of 4. So it's really good. And RAP has been around for about 20 years. So it's something I'm really passionate about. And one thing we've done in our district is we have invited, we're going to do it for our clients, because if people practice wellness, they're much more likely to get more out of treatment. The same is true for staff. If we practice wellness and our own wellness and have responsibility for that, we're going to be more effective with our clients. So we're offering RAP for our clients. We're also offering it for our staff too, which is kind of cool. And if you do RAP, you have to go through it. So the 5 tenets of RAP are hope, personal responsibility, education, self-advocacy, and support. Just some things, just using this as an example. Hopefully you guys don't think I'm super shallow, but some of my daily habits that I have to be involved in to be well, these are things that we do every day. Coffee. I love coffee, and coffee gets me going in the morning. Somebody put in the chat about hydrating. I try to hit 80 to 100 ounces of water a day. I watch what I eat. I've kind of quit going out to eat a whole lot. I exercise. I also practice spirituality and do devotions as well. That really helps. Then there's things that we do sometimes. So these are things I would love to do every day, but if I did, my wife would probably leave me. I love to pheasant hunt, and I used to duck hunt. I don't anymore because I don't like being wet and getting up at 3 a.m. But I still pheasant hunt a lot. I love the outdoors. I hike a lot. I have 2 dogs that they're my kids now that my kids have left the house. I play golf. I can't do that every day. It's expensive. Love movies, things like that. So when you practice wellness, you become mindful of the daily habits that kind of insulate you from stress. In other words, if something is insulated, you still may experience the shock, but it's not as bad. And so when we practice those daily habits, it insulates us from some of that stress, and it opens our window of tolerance where we can tolerate more than we would. Some of the other things that we do every once in a while, those are the things that kind of keep us going and give us some identity. And those are the things that we can look forward to. And then the other thing that you do with RAP is you develop a plan. So you get mindful of, when things are breaking down for me, here's what I need to do. So it's almost like a disaster relief plan with yourself. And this is really uncomfortable when I take staff through RAP, because somebody put in the chat that we sometimes focus on taking care of other people and not ourselves. And so when we take staff through RAP, it's really hard for them sometimes, because we hate asking for help, and we hate relying on other people, and we hate admitting when we're breaking down mentally or emotionally. But if we can become mindful of that and recognize those early warning signs when things are breaking down, then we can intervene much earlier. And then the other thing with that too is that if we communicate, we tell our clients to do this, right? We tell them to build support networks or have protective factors, but yet sometimes we don't follow that same advice. So that's what part of RAP is. It's about having a support network and communicating. It takes vulnerability. You have to be able to communicate with your support network how you need supported or what you need help with. And so when we work in the helping professions, it should be people kind of in our own circle in our job, but it should sometimes be people outside of our job too that do something else. So having that variety is really good, but definitely having a support team that will hold you accountable to wellness is so important. Any questions or comments with that? If not, go ahead, Michael, proceed.
Yeah. Any questions, comments, concerns at this point? Looking good. And feel free to throw those in there as we go. So a couple more memes. So really the worst part about getting a new therapist is catching them up. So I made a PowerPoint to help. I think that's absolutely hilarious. Thank you, Jim, for sharing that one. And yesterday I explained something so bleak to my therapist that she asked me if she could pause for a minute so she could think about it. I'm getting close to winning therapy. I can feel it in my bones. Oddly enough, sometimes it feels like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but as I've worked towards getting well, and I know I'm not there, but as I've worked towards getting well, it sometimes feels like there's a competition of whose life is worse. I don't know if you guys have had that experience, but let's have a little group discussion. And then at the end, I'm going to just do a basic challenge for you. Okay. Something I'm throwing in. We have, I think we have about 15 minutes technically left. So one of the things that Jim talked about was that, our district, and there's others around the state that are starting to focus on wellness. There's some initiatives that we've started here. Jim and I are also part of our wellness committee here as co-chairs. So we challenge you, for one, this is one of the challenges, to ask yourself, okay, when I'm well, how does this affect my life? So if you are well, remember we talked about looking forward, seeing what things could be. If you're moving towards the things you value, think about your values for a minute, what you really, really care about. And if you are doing well, how does this affect your life? And I'm not just talking about your work life, I'm talking about your life in general. How do you know you're doing well? What does that look like for you? Let's start there. And again, if it's too much to type, feel free to unmute and say what you need to. Okay. As you guys are hopefully typing, here we go. Patrick, very good. The things that usually get under your skin no longer bother you. So if I were to phrase that, Patrick, you correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is that for you, the things that usually get under my skin no longer bother me. Okay. Okay. So for Lynette, your relationships are harmonious, sleep well, exercise, feel good about myself, spend time in nature and enjoy the moment. So you're ever present. Katrina, living in my values authentically. Very good. Putting the oxygen mask on myself first. So I'm the best version of myself for others. You beat me to the punch already. What she's referring to is, if you guys have ever gotten on an airplane, which I'm sure many of us have, they always get up there and the folks, the stewardesses or stewards, I don't know what they're called these days, steward people, I don't know. They tell you to, they show you how to use that little oxygen mask, and they say to put it on yourself before you put it on somebody next to you in case they're passed out. Well, the reality is that, as Jim said, we have a tendency to be helpers, to exhaust ourselves without even paying attention to kind of what we're dealing with. So whole point is to focus on me first, which is not selfish, but just to make sure that my self-care is in check before I continue to help others. We are in a helping profession, especially when it comes to reentry stuff. Okay. Look forward to something when I am well. Renee, I like that. Anticipation itself is part of the reward system. If I remember correctly, it causes an uptick in dopamine. Okay, so serotonin might be the feel-good the peaceful feeling, while dopamine is that anticipation feeling we have. I can't tell you how many times I look forward to going to the golf course and end up not feeling so peaceful when I'm done. But I always look forward to it. There's that concept of looking forward towards something that I enjoy. I'm in line with my passions and feel purposeful. I'm very good. Purposeful activity is one of my values. It's right up here on the wall. Asking for help is critical and a sign of well-rounded leader. Very good. I think that's very fair as well. It's easy to try to take the bull by the horns and do it alone, but we can't. Okay. Actions are aligned with my values and beliefs. And I would ask you, Joshua, A follow-up question to that is, how do you know? How do you know that your actions are aligned with your values and beliefs? Do you have somebody that can call you on it, check you on it, that can keep you uh, keep you on your own straight and narrow? Gary, flight attendants, thank you. That's a Gary comment. Valerie, security and confidence no matter the storm or season. Okay, so the feeling of being at peace no matter what. Um, Daniel, my faith, family, and devotion to be better than I was yesterday. Okay. Handbells. Renee especially looks forward to playing handbells. Is that for a church thing or is that Christmas? I mean, what do we, because everybody looks forward to Christmas, right? Staying in gratitude, transparency, family time, Harley Davidson motorcycles, accountability team. Okay. Gary, very good. Being myself, relaxed, centered, and you are welcome. Okay. Church year round. Oh, gotcha. Handbells at church. Okay.
I like
Awesome.
what Jesse said about gratitude. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of studies that show that people that are in a healthy mindset practice gratitude
Yes.
a lot. And so I do think that's actually a sign of health um, when you can thank people around you. So
Yes. Yes. Very good. I'm glad you brought that up. This is great, everybody. Love spending time with others, but also needs some solo time. And Renee's played in the prisons too. Yeah, absolutely. Knowing the difference between, when enough is enough. Sometimes you got to take a step back from the social calendar, right? Sometimes there's just too much going on. These are all great. So let's go further into this. Just one more question before just kind of a little challenge. What do you need? What do you need to help you achieve the best version of you? Like I said, here in our district, we're looking at ways to help with wellness. We hope to roll out a little wellness hub in the future. But I'm curious, what do you need that would be helpful for you from others? Generally speaking, you can give generalities or you can give something in particular that you need. Because again, we don't live life in a bubble. So what do you need to help you achieve the best version of you? Grace, confidence, oh, good. Grace. Uh-huh. Not just grace from others, Valerie, but I'm guessing grace for yourself as well.
I think that's another symptom of health is when we can extend grace to other people. That's when we have a window of tolerance built up from our own wellness, and we have a good mindset, I think.
Yes, very good. And those of you that maybe don't know what grace is, you could look it up. But it's always been described to me as unmerited favor. It's something that I have never really done, and nothing I can do to deserve it. It's just something that's given. Not to be afraid of making mistakes. Acknowledgement, support, grace, and flexibility. Yep. Look at this. I mean, we're all human, right? Understanding. Yep. That is grace, I think. Support teams. Yep. Honest feedback from people who invest in my life. I like that, Blake. That's true. You've done that for me.
Me
Grace,
too.
support, and therapy. Yep. Leadership that's open to our version of wellness. Good leadership makes a beautiful difference in how we do our jobs. I would agree with that too. Like I said at the onset of this, if whoever's here is seen as a leader in a leadership role, an organization tends to take on the personality and traits of its leaders. Can I speak? Yeah. Yep.
I would say for me, it's kind of weird. I'm an odd duck, but ensuring that people are around me within my organization, making sure that they're okay. Because for some reason, I used to say, "Oh man, I don't like people," but I find myself more and more each day, like making sure that everybody else is okay and checking in with people, which in turns allows them when they notice that I'm off balance, they'll, "Hey, are you okay? What's going on?" And so it all kind of coincides. So, but this is great. So,
Yeah. Patrick, I hear you, man. And I love that. And thank you for speaking up because, as Jim alluded to earlier, showing gratitude, I think, can open the door for a closer relationship with others. Patrick, there's nothing wrong with you going to a coworker and saying, "Hey, you know what I really appreciate about you today is this, this, and this." If they have that safety and acknowledgement as a human being, and they know that you care, that means that when they're not doing so well, they might be more likely to talk to you too, and you're not going to turn them away. And that's why this starts with me. my willingness to express gratitude, my willingness to understand me. The process of understanding ourselves is the starting point for it. Gary says, Patrick, we're all odd ducks. It's what we, that's why we do the work we do. Yep. Yep. And then seeing people succeed in teamwork celebrations. I think that's true. It goes to that purposeful activity. Folks, these are great responses. I really, really appreciate this. I'm going to throw up we'll have our information here in a minute, but I want to go back to an earlier slide if I could, as sort of a little challenge. I want to go back to the SAMHSA website slide. So we talked about defining wellness and how it can be considered a balance or harmony. Again, I don't care what word you use for it, but I do want to challenge you today. There are 8 dimensions according to SAMHSA of this. And I was sitting over in Las Vegas with Jim and a bunch of our other colleagues there. And this was presented in one of the APPA presentations. And I sat there and I thought, you know what? I feel pretty good. Like I looked at every one of these and I said, I feel pretty good. I know I'm not there, but I walked away thinking, I got this. It felt really good to see that in each one of these areas, I feel like I'm getting there because it's been something I've been striving for and working for. So this is just me. This is just my story. But on here, you'll see that there's 8 dimensions. We have our environmental dimension, our emotional dimension, financial, social, spiritual, occupational, physical, and intellectual. The challenge for you is to think about a couple things. One, what is your legacy going to be when you're gone? I know when we went through MRT, they have a assignment where you have to write down in 5 words or less how you kind of want to be remembered. And one of the things that I wrote down was that what this man did mattered. And that's, if they were to put that on my gravestone, I'd be okay with that. But this man did matter. So I want you to think about what you value, what you care about, where you could see yourself in a couple of years if you really turned inward instead of focusing on everybody else's issues and just kind of looked inward to see your own vulnerabilities, your own issues, and say, where am I in these 8 dimensions of wellness? Where am I struggling? Where am I doing well? And just pick one thing, anything to work on, to move towards. Put some goals, some short-term goals to reach. We've done this with our clients for years, the people we work with, to help them with reentry. Do the same for yourself. Because ultimately your wellness is going to impact the people you work with. And I certainly hope that makes sense. Blake said that there's a quote that stuck with me. If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll never make time for your illness. Yep. Gary said, I did this with my EQI coach. It's very helpful and truly makes you think about where you are in all aspects of life. Yeah. Are there any, we're running up on time. We got 2 minutes left. Are there any questions, comments, additional things, advice? I don't know. I'll take it. And I do want to say thank you very much for the interactions. That's awesome. We really appreciate that. This is obviously something that's needed for all of us. And we're blessed and thankful we had a chance to kind of just talk with you about a couple things today, because we could do all day on this. Honestly, this is just a short snippet. You're welcome.
I would like to say that this is really good that we're doing this, because a lot of the mindset is wrapped around, one, you don't get close to your staff, you don't get to know your staff, you just come in and do the work and then you go home at the end of the day. So being able to do this and break down those barriers and those old myths and stuff to let people know that we really care about them will have a tremendous impact on our business and what we're doing, because the job is tough enough as it is. And if somebody comes to work, especially in our business, and they come in and they're having a bad day and then they deal with a client and then they haven't gotten something done, and then you go and talk to them, it's like a snowball effect. And then it's like chaos. And then it's like, what do we do? What do we do? So we have to make sure that we're checking in with people. So I'm glad we're doing this, and you guys did a tremendous job. Appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you, Patrick.
Thanks,
Thank
Patrick.
you so much. And I see all the other comments, Roland. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Well, I'll stick around for a little bit if anybody has any stuff, and that Jim guy, Gary. If anybody's got any additional information. I know we're going to start up here, Jennifer, what at
At
11?
11 o'clock.
Okay.
So we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll meet back for the next session. Thank you so much, Michael and James.